Welcome to my Viewfinder. My name is David Youn. We have new episodes every Friday. I've decided to start adding projects or challenges at the end of each episode, so don't forget to check that out. Let me know how you're doing in the comment section, or you can find me on Instagram at My Viewfinder Podcast, on Twitter at MVF Podcast, or you can just email me at dyunphoto@gmail.com. All right, let's start again.
Okay, sounds good.
Tell me again about the best meal you've ever had.
Yeah, so it's actually a meal that, has origins in a place that I've traveled to, but that I've only really eaten close to home, and it's a dish called saltfish and ackee, and it's a Jamaican dish that my mother and grandmother both make, and it used to kind of only be like a kind of festive meal that we had, like on special occasions, but now it seems like they make it like every other week, which is pretty great.
What is it?
Okay, so it's like salted cod. Fish is kind of, I suppose, one of the main ingredients, and you kind of soak it overnight to take some of the salt out because it's so salty. And then you boil it to take out more salt. But ackee is actually the national fruit of Jamaica, and it's quite hard to describe because I don't really know another fruit or vegetable like it, but it's kind of like this. It's a yellow, very tender and soft, almost kind of flaky fruit, and it's quite sweet. Yeah.
Flaky is interesting. I wasn't expecting flaky.
Yeah, it's a strange texture. It's a bit difficult to describe. Yeah.
My Viewfinder is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. With Pod Power, our sponsors are making it possible for us to amplify the voices of Albertans and Alberta podcasters. This episode, Edmonton Community Foundation is helping us give a Pod Power shout out to Book Women. Book Women is a podcast about editing, publishing, and writing Indigenous stories. 3 Métis librarians, representing nations from across the homeland, aim to inspire Indigenous people to share their stories in whatever form that they enjoy. Guests include Indigenous storytellers from diverse mediums like podcasting, burlesque, books, comics, social media, films, music, and everything in between. You can listen and find out more at bookwomenpodcast.ca. Can images inspire change? I've been cynical about the impact of photography on our culture, our self-esteem, our understanding of the world around us. But what if images could inspire others to become more involved in a constructive way? Well, Ryan believes that wildlife photography can do this, at least when it's coupled with positive narratives. It's not just conservation, even just inspiring a viewer to take a walk outside and pay attention to the beauty all around us. Just don't grab a couple of dead frogs and pin them together in a stack. Ryan has pretty strong opinions about that as well. Here's the second half of my conversation with Ryan Wilkes about photographing outside, wildlife, and his stoic, responsible approach to life. One of the sort of drivers of this conversation, this podcast, has been my worry. I just spoke with Donna on the previous interview, and she said that I should stop brooding, but I am often cynical about this stuff. But my worry about the role and relationship images have. So with documentary, war, propaganda, media, it's usually influence on human culture, sociological stuff. With nature photography, well, I'm sure you have a wider gamut than just taking pictures of birds, but you brought up, for example, a landscape photographer lining this up to get a great photograph. Are you having this experience with some wax-tipped, I can't remember what it was, and getting a photograph that you really connected with? What do you think, like, the relationship of image making is for you? Is it about telling other people a story about something that they ought to be looking at? Is it something much more personal? Like, do you think there's an impact that nature photography has? It sells well in Calgary, but outside of this commercial thing, is there a message or a narrative that motivates you to keep doing this and and obviously work more and more if you're researching and planning to go out and do this sort of bigger process, then I feel like there must be a stronger story than, just staying with a walk in the park and a point and shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely multifaceted. There's the personal side of it, which is like I get extreme joy and satisfaction from just being in the wild and just experiencing it, and getting a payoff of an experience with an animal that I probably suffered for. That to me is like the ultimate, and that's even without even touching the shutter. Like that is a great experience for me, being out there, having an experience, disconnecting. Yeah, that's really what I love to do. With taking photos, being able to capture that moment for myself, or a moment of that experience that I had in an environment, whether it was with some animal or another being, or just with a landscape. I love that aspect of it too, being able to preserve that moment. And then thirdly, being able to share that with other people and tell the story behind the image is also really satisfying for me. And I think that's the part that kind of gives the work an extra bit of meaning, is like so many people haven't seen certain birds up close, or any bird up close. And when you're able to kind of sit there and look at a photo of a bird and see like the minute details of different different feathers, and the different colors and their beaks and what their feet look like close up, it just kind of gives you this like sense of awe in a way. And I love showing these images to people, just to kind of be like, this is what's out there. And like, yeah. And then I guess taking it to another level is like using the images to inspire change. And so like conservation photography is something that I've kind of been looking into and looking for more opportunities in, but for endangered species that need more attention brought to them to, help them keep them on our planet. We need powerful images of them to, convince people who are the decision makers that these animals need our help. And I would hope that some of my images could help with causes like that. So yeah, there's a few different things that are kind of, I think, bring meaning to it for me.
I like the order in which you listed that. I think it's important to me that you went with sort of a personal, experiential thing, and then photography for yourself, and then peer groups to explain how you got there and what you saw, and then this sort of broader question of again, humanity's role in nature. I think that's such a powerful and important sort of hierarchy. I find often that I'm confused in those steps. As you brought up, when I'm out shooting, as rare as that's become, I can slip into a great mode where I just don't remember anything else that's going on, and I can be in a moment. But I also hang on to a lot of insecurities about, how people will judge the work. I don't think I have this story yet that I either want, intend, or just naturally comes out of the work itself. Do you think is that something that's always been inherent when you take these photographs, or is this something that's developed as you developed taking, we're focusing a lot on birds, but as you took, I guess, better and better or more involved photographs with birds, does that story evolve? Is it, I don't know, it's fascinating to me. We are in Exposure Studio just learning about how everybody deals with this research part, this narrative building part. And, in this last iteration, you're actually going out and trying to find a cause to push towards. Is that something you think that's just the way that you think, or is that something that's kind of evolved as you got more feedback with the work that you're sort of doing for yourself?
Like the part about like looking for a cause, like kind of a deeper a deeper reason. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, I think in the end, for sure. Yeah, like moving that into the conservation and trying to be part of that conversation is that's a big thing. That's not a step that everybody takes.
Yeah, I think, part of the reason is that capturing images, like, I don't know if I've, captured any images yet that would really make an impact on kind of like a national level with, conservation initiatives for a species. Because those kinds of images, I feel, take a lot of planning and a lot of time to capture. Because what you're kind of looking for is this intersect between beauty, like the raw beauty of this species, and some kind of behavior that it's exhibiting that people can connect with kind of on a deeper level. And so, for example, there were some of the images that won awards at the Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition this past year. The one that won the overall prize is this photo of a Siberian tiger in Russia, and it's hugging a tree, and it's just so beautiful. It's like kind of touches on like this tiger, which are so rare these days. The Siberian tigers, it's they're very difficult to find, let alone photograph, let alone hugging a tree. Like, just the symbolism in that image is so strong. And then another one that sticks out was some really beautiful portraits of a monkey, where the monkey looks as if it's kind of meditating. It's got its eyes closed, and it's just kind of looking up. It's kind of got its chin tilted upwards, kind of towards the sky, and it just looks like it's kind of taking in this deep breath of fresh morning air, and just kind of being like, relax, and it's just beautiful. So it's to get these images that are really going to like rock someone and stick with someone, it takes a lot, and that's kind of what I'm starting to work towards. Like this winter, hopefully, being out in the Rockies for a few days at a time, working on capturing specific subjects, doing specific things, and yeah, of course, finding a way to sustain yourself while you go on these adventures is a whole nother thing. And this is common across all forms of photography when you're working on projects. But that's kind of the next step for me in my practice, and capturing images that can really make a difference.
To play the cynic, as usual, do you think, when you're describing these images, I can kind of, I suppose, picture the pictures. The question I ask myself is this question about the strongly negative words propaganda, but I suppose implied and intentional meaning, maybe not necessarily in a photo manipulation sense. Do you think, what's the best way to put it? I worry often about both human beings' innate ability to create structural meaning out of anything, and also the sort of influence our perception of these symbols have on the environment around us. So, for example, we imply a circular shape to describe a cycle of life. We described a monkey that was taking a photograph, but it's in a human form. It seems to be meditating, therefore it can connect to presumably a less educated or a less involved audience to generate some type of emotional response. Is that something that should be left at a surface level, or is that something we should be wary of? I don't know. I mean, with nature, it's an interesting thing. Like with politicized images in photojournalism, social media, I think the impact is so much more direct, because when we are in front of other human beings, presumably doing something, that impact is so immediate. But I don't know. And our relationships are actually so poisonous between human beings, so we can negatively impact each other very quickly. But with this idea of conservation, one of the bad jokes I make is questioning whether we should be saving pandas. They can't even have babies on their own anymore. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we did start, I think, off mic, a broad idea of conservationism. And I don't know if the example of eagles and geese makes sense in this context, but is there a way to, in your mind, that this impact of photography is supposed to be for the good? Does any of that make sense? I don't know. I feel like I'm babbling.
Yeah, I think so. No, that's all right. I think so. So I will say that I think, at the root of conservation, it's like, how do we get more people involved in conservation? Well, to me, it's getting people more people outside, getting people out birding, for example. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just getting people out in nature, observing and appreciating what's around them. And then from there, it just grows for the most part. Obviously, it's not for everyone, but I know my personal experience and many other people's experiences who I've spoken to, it's just this cascade of events from going outside and starting to hike one summer, and then before you know it, like every single weekend you're summiting a mountain, and then you start to want to spend more time out there, and then all of a sudden you're like learning about the different trees that are like on the side of the trail when you're on the mountain, and you start learning about the birds and all the other animals that you're seeing. And at the root of it is just getting outside, spending time out there, and being curious. So I think that when it comes to these images, and I totally agree with you with like how some of these animals can be represented is sometimes maybe not truthful, and that does happen in this genre for sure. But if the animal is not being manipulated in any way, and this beautiful image is somehow getting more people interested in nature, just in general, then I think it's a positive outcome. Where things get a bit squirrely is like when people are manipulating animals for photography, and that is just an absolute no-go for me. Whether it's baiting animals, whether it's literally some people have been using like dead reptiles, amphibians, and invertebrates and like putting wires in them and putting them into crazy positions. And like you may have seen photos on Instagram of like 3 different size frogs like on each other's backs. Like those are fake. Like that does not happen. And people are being called out for it, which is great because they should be, especially, trying to pass it off as real. I mean, if you want to claim that those animals are deceased and like died in a natural way, and like you have the permits or whatever you need to be collecting these dead animals and removing them from their environment, then like fine. But like you need to say that. You can't be kind of like creating this fantasy world of wildlife that does not happen at all out there and then claiming that it's real. So I think there's a couple different things there. Maybe after this, I'll send you an Instagram page dedicated to calling out fake wildlife photography, and you can see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's interesting, kind of. Originally in one of the books Louis lent me, but I just picked up another sort of shorter version of that. And in the history of photography, at the beginning of the sort of, I suppose, photojournalistic route, which was when they decided to try to bring these old cameras to a war. The cameras are too heavy, too slow, and the people were not looking to be on the front line. So they ended up staging a lot of the either pre-post battle imagery. So often there were even photographs that they've shown where people would arrange deceased bodies or reenact a meeting for a general or a surgeon performing field amputations, etc.
Mm-hmm.
What's fascinating is, it's such a weird hindsight thing. Like, was that a bad thing? And I end up in this weird philosophical problem of intent versus impact. I see that when you say that any kind of awareness is going to help bring a message of being part of nature, maybe. Yeah, I feel like that's I don't want to say easier, but there's more ability to stay pure maybe in nature photography. Not that people don't manipulate everything. I mean, Photoshop's Photoshop, but whether I see a constructed vision of a mountain or not still makes me appreciate mountains, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. That is something that's interesting to talk about. But yeah, I think in conservation, nature, wildlife photography, if something has been captured, what's the word I'm looking for? If something has been captured, like without manipulation, without external manipulation of the animal or the environment, and that image is, getting people interested in nature, sparking a bit of curiosity in a few people. And I understand that, and oftentimes it's probably a lot more complicated than just that. But then like for the most part, I think it's a good thing.
So if we kind of do a flip here, I mean, yeah, what happens next? So we're planning on doing more, but we did talk again off mic about listening to all these exposure speakers and all of our new friends that we're making through the studio program. You brought up the interest of potentially talking about human portraiture. Do you think is there a way to sum up quickly, what you think will be the biggest difference between humans and animals, I suppose?
Well, I think that, oh, geez. Yeah, this is a great question that I have not obviously put much thought into yet. But, animals, with animals, it's almost like, you get what you see, or you see what you get. Like, they're not going to like put on a show to like hide something from you. Like, their instinct and their nature is going to come out if you're kind of there and you've done your research. With humans, it's a different game. Trying to get to the core of someone and capture what you are there to capture, I think is a completely different process. And so, yeah, that's going to be a new challenge for sure. Just
imagining you in like tactical camouflage at a park, waiting for a human being to do something natural for the conservation of our species.
Yeah.
If you could tell the world one thing, what would it be?
Go outside and stare at a bird.
Directly in the eyes, or because that would scare the
it depends what kind of bird. So there's a few birds out there you probably don't want to intimidate. But for me, it would just be like, spend some time outside, leave your friggin' phone in the car, like throw it in a fucking river. Just don't bring it with you, and appreciate what's around you. Touch some trees, like walk around barefoot in some dirt. Watch the ants for a little while, see what they're up to. Just appreciate what's around you.
And just for anyone listening, your iPhone is waterproof, so it will not damage the phone when you throw it in the river. Which bird is it that can be a meta tool user? Is it a crow or a raven? I saw that videos. Some crows are very smart, and also Kia, the parrot that I was talking about earlier. They're also known for their tool usage. It's crazy to think. It's like when you read about octopus and how they say the only saving grace, they only live whatever it is 5 years. Otherwise, they'd probably outsmart us all. Particularly birds. You haven't convinced me. I think birds are majestic at a distance, but they're so weird, man. They are. We'll go hang out at Inglewood one day next summer, and I'll convince you. Yeah, if we're allowed. True. If we're allowed, you can take me to the sanctuary or something. And my birder friend said there's some app that will listen to bird call. I don't know. I won't say no. I won't think emotionally, but we could go look at a bird. I can see a bird and see if I've changed my mind.
All right, sounds good.
All right, man. Well, thanks for spending so much time with me. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been great. Long overdue, so I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, when you're back from hanging out with eagles, I think eagles have always been my favorite. Then hopefully, I've said this with everybody, but hopefully we'll get an opportunity to either have a socially distant coffee or just get a bunch of people together to, I don't know, come up with something. Just do something.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, we need to.
All right. So last week we talked about getting out birding. This week I thought we could simply just look around the internet for these types of images. If you want a great place to start, it's Ryan's own webpage, Ryan Wilkes, that's RyanWilkes.com. Or you can check out his Instagram at ExploraStory, that's EXPLORASTORY. But I'd say branch out from there. While I don't want to brainwash any of us into becoming, Greenpeace conservationists, I think, A, there's a reason why Natural Geographic has become a cultural touchstone, and B, I want to test out Ryan's belief that images can inspire us to be more present and appreciative of the natural world we live in. We spend a lot of time inside technology. Let's see if technology can help us get back out into the real world. Imagine the irony. Do you have an opinion that might surprise people or otherwise be unpopular?
I do have one of these opinions, and I think everyone is well aware of it, but it's just a very bitter thing to swallow, and that is that none of us are responsible for how anyone feels. Like I guess a better way to put it is, you are responsible for your emotions, and anything that's external that is being directed towards you. You have a choice on deciding on how you're going to react to that, and I think that deep down everyone knows that, but coming to terms with it is quite difficult.
Yeah, it's pretty sage. I mean, just to press, that's something that has taken me, I'm 42 now, so 42 years to try to learn. But do you think that's something that you've learned through experience, or is that something that's maybe come from a familial wisdom? Because that's a big one. It's one of the things that I've been joking about with Twitter and things, where people can say whatever the fuck they want, but they just don't want to take the responsibility of whatever they're doing, and they want to be absolved of even feeling good or feeling bad from everything. It's getting very, very weird. But do you think that comes from the life you've led? Is something you've always believed, or is there a moment that convinced you that you had to take control of your own emotional well-being?
I think when I was quite young, I started learning about Stoic philosophy, and it just really made sense to me as like a really great kind of set of beliefs or philosophy to kind of live your life by, or at least draw some inspiration from, and how to lead a pretty cool life. And so that's something that I've followed for quite some time. So listening to Tim Ferriss talk about Marcus Aurelius, or reading Ryan Holiday's books are great places to start with that. But it really is just all about taking ownership over your life and your emotions, and it's not about numbing yourself, which I think people often get. You say Stoic and people think, oh, emotionless. It's like, actually, it's more about like accepting that external stimulus and taking that extra 3 seconds to be like, okay, what do I do with this, rather than just reacting with the gut reaction. Because as human beings, like, that's part of our nature to have gut reactions. But I think that life can be a lot more enjoyable, at least it has been for me, when I've kind of learned to internalize a little bit of that and just have a moment of clarity to decide how that reaction is going to come out.
I'm always fascinated how reading meditations, it's like you could tweet that and people would be shocked because it's so relevant. It's something that was written in like,
I know,
2,000
right?
years
It's
ago.
amazing.
This episode of My Viewfinder is brought to you by the Calgary Foundation, proudly supporting community needs for 65 years. Empathy, kindness, generosity. We are united in our desire to give, to inspire hope, and transform the lives of people who are struggling in turbulent times, and the Calgary Foundation is here to help. From mental health programs to environmental causes, the Community Knowledge Center website features profiles of charitable organizations, all searchable by area of interest. Be inspired by compelling stories. Be informed of innovative work. Be responsive to the needs. To connect to hundreds of outstanding charitable organizations serving our community, visit ckc.calgaryfoundation.org. To learn more about the Calgary Foundation, visit calgaryfoundation.org.